Chapter 23. Other spiritual causes of the soul's trouble discovered and removed, and objections answered. Another thing that disquiets and casts down the soul very much is that inward conflict betwixt grace and corruption. This makes us most work, and puts us to most disquietment. Hatred of the neighbors are the bitterest. It is the trouble of troubles to have two inhabitants so near in one soul, and these to strive one against another, in every action, and at all times in every part and power in us, the one carrying us upward, higher and higher still, till we come to God, the other pulling us lower and lower, further from Him. This cannot but breed a great disquiet, when a Christian shall be put on to that which he would not, and hindered from that which he would do, or troubled in the performance of it. Romans 7:21-23. The more light there is to discern, and life of grace to be sensible hereof, and the more love of Christ, and desire from love to be like to Him, the more irksome will this be. No wonder then that the Apostle cried out, O wretched man that I am, etc. Romans 7:24. Here is a special use of trust in the free mercy of God in justification, considering all is stained that comes from us. It is one main end of God's leaving us in this conflicting condition, that we may live and die by faith in the perfect righteousness of Christ, whereby we glorify God more than if we had perfect righteousness of our own. Hereby likewise we are driven to make use of all the promises of grace, and to trust in God for the performance of them, in strengthening His own party in us, and not only to trust in God for particular graces, but for His Spirit, which is the spring of all graces, which we have through and from Christ, who will help us in this fight until He hath made us like Himself. We are under the government of grace, sin is deposed from the rule it had, and shall never recover the right it had again. It is left in us for matter of exercise, and ground of triumph. Objection. Oh, say some, I shall never hold out, as good give over at first as at last. I find such strong inclination to sin in me, and such weakness to resist temptation, that I fear I shall but shame the cause. I shall one day perish, by the hand of Satan strengthening my corruption. Answer. Why art thou thus troubled? Trust in God, grace will be above nature, God above the devil, the spirit above the flesh. Be strong in the Lord, the battle is His, and the victory ours beforehand. If we fought in our own cause and strength, and with our weapons, it were something, but as we fight in the power of God, so are we kept by that mighty power through faith unto salvation. 1 Peter 1:5. It lies upon the faithfulness of Christ, to put us into that possession of glory which He hath purchased for us. Therefore charge the soul to make use of the promises, and rely upon God for perfecting the good work that He hath begun in thee. Corruptions be strong, but stronger is He that is in us than that corruption that is in us. When we are weak in our own sense, then are we strong in Him who perfects strength in our weakness, felt and acknowledged. Our corruptions are God's enemies as well as ours, and, therefore, in trusting to Him and fighting against them, we may be sure He will take our part against them. Objection. But I have great impediments and many discouragements in my Christian course. Answer. What if our impediment be mountains? Faith is able to remove them. Who art thou, O mountain? Zechariah 4:7, saith the prophet. What a world of impediments were there betwixt Egypt and the land of Canaan, betwixt the return out of Babylon and Jerusalem, yet faith removed all by looking to God's power and truth in His promise. The looking too much to the Anakims and giants, and too little to God's omnipotency, shut the Israelites out of Canaan, and put God to His oath that they should never enter into His rest, Psalm 95:11, and it will exclude our souls from happiness at length, if, looking too much upon these Anakims within us and without us, we basely despair and give over the field, considering all our enemies are not only conquered for us by our head, but shall be conquered in us, so that in strength of assistance we fight against them. God gave the Israelites enemies into their hands, but yet they must fight it out, and what coward will not fight when he is sure of help and victory? Objection. But I carry continually about me a corrupt heart. If that were once changed, I could have some comfort. A new heart is God's creature, and he hath promised to create it in us. Psalm 51:10, Ephesians 2:10. A creating power can not only bring something out of nothing, but contrary out of contrary. Where we are sure of God's truth, let us never question that power to which all things are possible. If our hearts were as ill as God is powerful and good, there were some ground of discouragement. In what measure we give up our hearts to God, in that measure we are sure to receive them better. That grace which enlargeth the heart to desire good is therefore given that God may increase it, being both a part and a pledge of further grace. Ezekiel 36:25. There is a promise of pouring clean water upon us which faith must sue out. Christ hath taken upon him to purge his spouse, and make her fit for himself. Ephesians 5:26 and 27. Objection. But I have many wants and defects to be supplied. Answer. It pleases him that in Christ all fullness shall dwell, Colossians 1:19, from whose fullness grace sufficient is dispensed to us answerable to the measure of our faith, whereby we fetch it from the fountain. The more we trust, the more we have. When we look, therefore, to our own want, we should look withal to Christ's fullness and his nearness to us, and take advantage from our misery to rest upon his all-sufficiency whose fullness is ours, as himself is. Our fullness, with our life, is hid in Christ, and distilled into us in such measure as his wisdom thinketh fit and as shows him to be a free agent, and yet so as the blame for want of grace lieth upon us. Seeing he is beforehand with us in his offers of grace, and our own consciences will tell us that our failings are more from cherishing of some lust than from unwillingness in him to supply us with grace. Objection. But God is of pure eyes, and cannot endure such services as I perform. Answer. Though God be of pure eyes, yet he looks upon us in him who is blameless and without spot, Hebrews 9:14, who, by virtue of his sweet, smelling sacrifice, appears for us in heaven, and mingles his odors with our service, and in him will God be known to us by the name of a kind Father. Not only in pardoning our defects, but accepting our endeavors. We offer our services to God, not in our own name, but in the name of our High Priest, who takes them from us, and presents them to his Father as stirred up by his Spirit and perfumed by his obedience. Jonah's prayer was mingled with a great deal of passion and imperfection, yet God could discern something of his own in it, and pity and pardon the rest.